So what's going on guys, Kate is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the top 3 best builds in New World 2023. So there is a new meta, and that's why for each and every single build I will explain what attributes, weapon masteries and even weapon and gear perks you want to have. Then what gems and specific gear you want to use to get out your stats as much damage as possible. Then as well I will show you the best gameplay of me using different weapons, so you would know which abilities you want to use first on your enemies and much more. So if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then taking a closer look at the first weapon, which is the great axe and warhammer, and these are the attributes you want to have. So no matter from which level you start using this build, you first of all want to get your strength to 200, and then get 100 points in constitution, and then continue putting everything else in strength. And then around level 60 and 625 item score gear, you should have around 300 strength and 200 constitution. And as you can see, the yellow bar color indicates the attributes that you get from level 60, then the blue color indicates the attributes that you get from gear, and then the purple color indicates the attributes that you get from your food. And then lastly, for your gear, you want to go with the medium category, which means using heavy helmet, heavy chest armor, medium gloves, light pants and medium boots. So then taking a closer look at the first weapon, which is the great axe, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the maelstrom, and then get these 3 perks. Then now get the second ability called the gravity well, and then get these 2 perks. Then from here let's move over to the other side and select this 1 perk, and then the last final ability called the charge, and then get these 3 perks, and that's it. Now from this point and onwards, you're free to pick and choose which perks you want to unlock next. So then moving over to the second weapon, which is the warhammer, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock this perk and then these 2 abilities called the shockwave and then path of destiny, and then get these 4 perks. Then now let's move over to the other side and get these 2 perks, and then the last and final ability called the wrecking ball, and then get these 2 perks, and that's it. Now again from this point and onwards you can unlock all the other perks in whatever order you like. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. And for the first weapon we have the great axe, and your first Q spell is called the maelstrom, which will perform a fast spinning attack that pulls all targets in 2.5 meter range and does bunch of AoE damage. Then the second ability is called the gravity well, which will swing your axe and create this electric storm in which your enemies will be stunned, slowed and will take bunch of damage. And then lastly we have the charge, which is a simple mobility spell that will make your character dash for 10 meters while at the end doing 120% of your weapon's damage. And then for the second weapon we have the warhammer, and your Q spell is called the shockwave, which will slam your hammer into the ground, causing a 3-meter earthquake that deals damage and staggers and roots your enemies for 2 seconds. Then the second skill is called the path of destiny, which will create this powerful ground strike that does a lot of damage in this AoE range. And then lastly we have the wrecking ball, which will strike the ground with your warhammer, dealing damage and at the same time knocking down your enemies. So then let's move over to the rotation, and no matter if you're farming mobs in PvE or doing PvP, the same principle and rules apply. So at the beginning of the fight we want to start with the great axe and use the gravity well, and then dash into the enemy with the charge ability. Then now the enemy will probably try to run, so use the maelstrom and pull him back. Then now let's switch to the warhammer and use the shockwave and then the wrecking ball. And then lastly finish off your enemy with the path of destiny, and that's about it. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This great axe and warhammer weapon combination is very high damage melee bruiser build that will give you high tankiness and high DPS potential. So then last but not the least, this is what you want to be using: great axe, hammer and chest armor wise, and perks are as important as gems. Then these are the best gloves, boots, leg armor and helmet. And then lastly, these are the top 3 best jewelry that you want to get. If I went too fast, you'll feel free to pause the video and copy these exact same gems and perks. But of course, this build will work fine with any gear as long as you're using the same attribute and weapon setup that I showed. And then one more thing, this is how your item should look like. So on your bar you want to use the health and regen potions, then get the cleansing potion or any other potion depending on what activity you are doing, and then lastly use the carrot cake. And then of course don't forget on your character to equip the heart rune of detonate. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for a super fun melee build that will give you a fun playstyle with high damage, then this is the build for you, so have fun. So then for the second build we have the greatsword and sword, and these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, if you start from level 0, you want to get your strength and dexterity to 200, and then start building your constitution, and around level 60 you should have 200 strength, 150 dexterity and 100 constitution. And then last but not the least, for your gear you want to go with the medium category, and you want to use one of those circle shaped small shields as well. And yes, each shield type has different weight, so don't forget to use the lightest shield, that still will make you in the medium category. So then taking a closer look at the first weapon, which is the greatsword, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first things first, you want to unlock the first ability called the crosscut, and then get these 2 perks. Then now get the second ability called the skyward slash, and then get these 2 perks. Then from here, let's move over to the other side and unlock these 2 perks. And then the last final ability called the steadfast strike, and then get these 2 perks, and that's it. Now from this moment, you can spend your points in whatever way you like. So then moving over to the second weapon, which is the sword, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all, you want to select these 2 perks, and then the first ability called the leaping strike, and then get these 2 perks. Then from here, let's go over to the other side and unlock the last 2 abilities called the shield rush and shield bash, and then lastly get these 2 perks, and that's it. Now again, from this point and onwards, you can spend your points in whatever way you prefer. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. And for the first weapon we have the greatsword, and your first Q ability is called the crosscut, which will perform 3 quick slash attacks, that with each attack will do more damage. Then the second skill is called the skyward slash, which will swing up your sword that will stagger, do damage and apply a range stacks on the enemy. And then lastly we have the steadfast strike, which will stab your enemies and can do up to 2 hits, which will do damage more and more and restore mana upon finishing the animation. And in PvE, this skill can be used to aggro all the monsters as well. And then for the second weapon we have the sword with shield, and your Q spell is called the leaping strike, which will make you leap forwards that will do damage and stagger the enemy. Then the second skill is called the shield rush, which will quickly make your character rush forwards while dealing damage and pushing back your enemy. This skill is great for counter attacks, to cancel the enemy animation, or to help out your teammates. And then lastly we have the shield bash, which is a short skill that will stun the enemy for 2 seconds, and this is the longest stunning ability in the game. Okay, so then let's move over to the rotation, and as I've already said, if you're farming mobs in PvE or doing PvP, the same general principles and rules apply. So at the start of the fight you want to use the sword and shield, and use the leaping strike to close the distance between you and the enemy. Then now use the shield rush, and then when the stagger ends, right away use the shield bash, which is the longest stun in the game. So then in those few seconds, now we want to switch to the greatsword and use the crosscuts, and keep spamming the heavy attacks. Then when the enemy starts dealing back damage to you, then now we use the skyward slash to do damage and stagger. And then lastly we use the steadfast strike, and then from here we just keep on using the greatsword attacks till the enemy gets eliminated. Or if you ever get in trouble, then switch back to the sword with shield and just keep on blocking the enemy attack by holding the right click, and that's it. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This greatsword and sword with shield weapon combination is super fun to play, and as you're using a medium armor, you can take some damage and at the same time do very high DPS numbers. So then last but not the least, for the greatsword and sword with shield, you want to use the opal gem, and then for all of your gear, use 3 malachite and 2 onyx gems. And then lastly, on your character, you want to equip the heart rune of detonate. And then on top of all this, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video, which is titled "Which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build?" You can find the link in this video description or just scroll through my channel. And in that video I will specifically explain how perks work and which ones are the best for your gear and weapons and much more. So in a quick summary, if you're looking to do high damage and you want a fun greatsword build, then this is the one for you, so enjoy! And then for the last and final build we have the Ice and Void Gauntlet. And then these are the attributes you want to have. So first things first, if you start from level 0, you want to get your intelligence to 150 and then start building your constitution. And around level 60 you should have 300 intelligence and 150 constitution. And lastly, for your gear you want to go with the medium category. And the best gear setup is to have heavy helmet, heavy chest armor, medium gloves, light pants and medium boots. And this will give you 22.9 kg weight, which is exactly just below the heavyweight category. So then moving over to the first weapon, which is the Void Gauntlet. And then these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock both these two perks and then get the first ability called the Oblivion, and then get these two perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Petrifying Scream, and then get these two perks. And now let's move over to the other side and unlock the last third ability called the Orb of Decay, and then get these three perks, and that's it. Now from this moment you can unlock all the other perks in whatever way you like. Okay, so now let's move over to the second weapon, which is the Ice Gauntlet, and these are the weapon masteries you want to have. So first of all you want to unlock the first ability called the Ice Spikes, and then get these three perks. Then afterwards unlock the second ability called the Ice Storm, and then get these three perks. Then from here let's move over to the other side and unlock this one perk, and then the last third ability called the Ice Shower, and then get this one last perk, and that's it. Now again from this moment you can spend your points in whatever order you want. Okay, so now let's go over to the gameplay where I'll show you the best way to play this build. So first of all, for the Void Gauntlet we have the first Q spell called the Oblivion, which creates a circle around you, and your teammates inside the circle will be getting 20% damage increase. But on the other hand, your enemy standing in the circle will be taking void damage every second. And a really nice thing to do is while standing in the circle, do bunch of medium jumps, and because of the perks we have selected we will be getting plus 15 stamina each jump, so this will give us the ability to dodge more enemy attacks and gain more stamina at the same time. I found this feature very useful in 1v1s to escape enemy attacks or in PvE, where the mobs couldn't catch me, and much more. So then for the second ability we have a Petrifying Scream, which when using will unleash a Void Scream, and this will stagger and root enemies in front of you. And then lastly we have a third ability, which is called the Orb of Decay, and you can fire this orb which can go through your targets, and each enemy that it hits it will deal decent damage and reduce their damage absorption, and then later that orb will come back and heal you for a few seconds. And lastly, if you hold the right mouse button you can regain more mana, but in exchange your health will go down. I would only recommend to use this mechanic if you really are at full health and your mana potions are on cooldown, so then use it for a second or two and then you should be good to go. But as for a non-healer build, you should use this mechanic super carefully. So then for the second weapon we have the Ice Gauntlet, and your Q spell is called the Ice Storm, which all enemies standing in it will get damaged and slowed, and the more enemies you hit the higher damage you will get. Then the R ability is called the Ice Shower, which when using will create an ice wall, and if players go through it will stun them, and this ability is very useful in chapping your targets. And then lastly our third ability is called the Ice Spikes, which when activating creates this trail of spikes in a straight line, which deals damage in AoE range, and if the target is below 30% health a lot of times you can one-shot him. And the way it works that if you're too close to the enemy when you're using the ability, the ice spikes won't explode with the highest damage to the enemy. So what you want to do is when using the spell and you see that the player is 1 second away from getting hit, then press the right mouse button and this will detonate the spike, which will deal very high damage. So as far as your ability combinations go for the Ice Gauntlet when farming mobs or even players, the best spell combination to do is place the Ice Storm aka the Q ability on grouped up enemies, and if you see that enemy is stunned then use the Ice Spike ability and do bunch of damage. Or another way to set up your Ice Spike ability is to run into the enemy and place the Ice Shower spell, and if the enemy touches the ice wall he will get stunned, so then you can use the Ice Spikes and it will be easier to hit the enemy. The thing that you need to understand about the Ice Spike ability is that the trail of spikes is actually pretty small line, so especially in PvP it is pretty hard to hit moving targets. So most of the time I usually use it when I see that I can hit 100% multiple players or just a single stunned player. And then of course for the Void Gauntlet you want to hit the enemy with the Petrifying Scream, and then right after place the Oblivion spell, and while dodging keep on hitting the enemy. Then when both of these abilities get on cooldown use the Orb of Decay, and then after that switch to the Ice Gauntlet or keep on using the Void Gauntlet depending on which weapon deals more damage, and that's about it. So now for my last and final conclusions for this build. This Void Gauntlet and Ice Gauntlet weapon combination is very high damage and you have a lot of abilities to put together, and it works very well in PvP and as well PvE. So then for the gem choice for the Void Gauntlet you want to use the Opal gem, then for the Ice Gauntlet get the Malachite gem, and then for all of your gear, rings, amulets and everything else use the Enix gems. And then on top of all this, like I explained in the first build, to find out the best weapon and gear perks, watch this video, which is titled which weapon and gear perks are the best for your build. You can find the link in this video's description or scroll through my channel, and in that video I will specifically explain how perks work and which ones are the best. So in a quick summary, if you're looking for the best solo mage build then this is the one for you, so enjoy. And that's about it. So I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good solo player builds that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you wouldn't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I'll catch you in my next video. So take it easy, peace.